Welcome to Right Angels and Polo Bears. In this demo, we will look at the many ways to change the properties of markup in Acrobat Reader. We're using the free Adobe Acrobat Reader, so you will be able to do this in the Pro or Standard versions as well. And on screen, I have one of my handouts that you can get for free on the website and some ridiculous markup so that we can demonstrate how to change properties. The first thing to do is make some marks on the page. You can see that in other demos. And to change the properties of this, I'm going to first click on the comment tools so that we now have the toolbar across the top. The first thing you'll see is I have one mark selected. And the easiest way to change these properties are to go up to the top bar and simply click on the different properties. Here we find that there are options for the color of the fill as well as for the color of the border. And if I go back to the fill, I can also change the opacity of it just with this little slider here. That changes the opacity of everything. Another way to change the properties, I'll click on a line here just to look at a different item, is to right click. That opens a context menu. And you can select properties from there, which gives us a properties interface. In my opinion, this is the most full version of the properties interface. And it will change the name at the top depending on which item you've chosen. So just for example, I will do the same thing over here. Click on properties. And now we see it says pencil mark properties instead of the line properties it said before. So line properties are pretty simple because there's just a line. We can change the colors. I prefer to go with just simple colors, but you can choose from any of the options. And we can change the line thickness and the opacity, just as before. So we'll click OK from that, and we'll show that this line has a couple more properties going in the same way with the context menu. Here we have a fill color. So if we see the line color, same as I saw before, but there's also fill color just the way we could access up here from the toolbar. In this case, it's a line, so selecting a fill for a line isn't going to get me very far, but it is possible. And I can also change, let's move this so we can see the line. I can change the style of line, adding an arrow or various other ends and beginnings to both sides. And I can change the style going to dashed, or in the case of a box, there are other options such as wavy lines and so forth, and thickness, of course. Click OK there. We can do the same thing to properties of a text mark. This is done using this mark I have selected was the strike through text tool. And just like the other items, I can change the color of that line simply by going to the top bar, or by right clicking, or by using the keyboard shortcut, which brings us a slightly different interface. On a Mac, the keyboard shortcut for properties is Command E. On a Windows computer, that would be Control E. And here we see a simpler version of the properties where I can change the color and the opacity. And if you have selected a different item, see how it changes. The callout properties has more options. I can change the border. I can change the fill. I can change the type of line, and here we see the kind of cloud shape I mentioned earlier, the thickness, and again, the opacity. From this properties bar that pops up, we can also access the full properties by clicking the More button. And that opens this big familiar box that we saw before. From here, you can also change the name of the person who has made the change. So I could also change it to proofreader, for example. And we can select Make the Properties Default, so that now when I select this particular tool, it will always have those properties. Setting the properties works for just about any of the markup tools in the comment toolbar. It also works for the highlighting tool in the same 3 ways. Now, if you have a whole bunch of these and you want to change the properties all at once, you can simply select them. On a Mac, you hold down the Control button to select several. And then you can, up at the top or through any of the other properties menus, change the properties of all those boxes at once, or all those drawn items at once. We see that when I changed some of the properties of this, we lost the text because the border took up too much room. You can just change the size of the box, or let's see if I can make this a little more visible. There we go. If I want to change the text, there are 2 ways to get at it. To change the properties of the text, I want to double click to enter into the box, and then I can select the text I want to change. And we see right here already it popped up with the properties of that text. So it's a little different. The bar at the top looks different now. And now that I have text selected, I can tell it to do different properties to these items, including changing the size of the text and the color. You can do that with parts of the text or all of the text. It affects whatever you select. It is imperfect, however. Sometimes there's a glitch in it and it doesn't work the way you would like to. So there are 3 different ways to access properties of the items on your screen. For more tips on using Adobe Acrobat, especially this free reader program for markup of page proofs and other production flow, see the other tips on this blog.